Comes into the final corner. Collins throws it down the inside. A block pass goes through, and he slows down Tremblay enough that Cassis will race to the line as Van Winkle goes off in the background. Torn Collins wins in a breathless super sport race. Young makes the move on the inside, picks up the drive towards the line, and it is too close to go up, though it looks like Garan has come away victorious. What a finish!
Welcome to the Canadian Superbike Podcast.
You've seen some crazy stuff in turn 8 off the back straight there, particularly between Young and Garan, and Jordan is going to have to measure up to that standard.
Tips it in, and Dumas is down. They will have to clean up that oil spill, but it comes too late for Alex Dumas. Zook doesn't look like he has enough, Colin, and Ben Young's going to bring it home for the title. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Canadian Superbike Podcast. Thank you for being here, as always. Marshall Ferguson alongside Colin Fraser, who has a camera. We are camera. Did you have to reach out to somebody to figure it out, Colin, or was this an organic solution? Because I tried everything last time. I couldn't figure it out.
No, I backed up and read the instructions for my Logi camera, which I bought at I know one of the few remaining stores that sells computer things. Canada, there was Canada Computer. They disappeared. Anyway, I actually, went, like if your Toyota is broken, it's always a good idea to check in on the Toyota website. So that's what I did.
Nice.
Just to be clear, my Toyota is not broken, and that's not the website I went to for the camera. I understand that the camera's not made by Toyota.
Don't jinx us. We're taking the Toyota down south. I mean, we'll get to that maybe a little bit later on in the show. But this edition of the Canadian Superbike Podcast is brought to you by Dirty Yeti lids. If anybody knows how to fix this, just like a perpetual coffee stain, I've also looked into this on the Yeti website, and they're like, yeah, just throw it in the dishwasher, and I have. And it looks disgusting. It's clean. It's sanitized.
So you soak it. You get a little tray, and you soak it in. Is it CLR or something like that? It's that thing that cleans out your drains, and you cut it with water. Don't put it in the pure stuff because that'll eat the rubber seal.
I was wondering if you were trying to poison me right now, but just dip your lid into some.
No. What after you've done that, then you wash it thoroughly the normal way or in the dishwasher, or whatever. Don't start using it with this. Is it CLR? Do I have the right stuff? Stuff that cleans your shower head and pipes and everything?
Yeah, it is CLR, but it's funny, Colin. I always think about products that become synonymous with their purpose. Like, hey, do you have Q-tips? Or, the people that talk about, sometimes Tide is known as, maybe these are just things that are on NASCARs after the Clash this week. That has me on the brain, all the different sponsors and liveries and all the rest of it.
Are we talking about how, Kleenex is tissue, but tissue isn't necessarily Kleenex, or Skidoo is a snowmobile, or all those sorts of things, because that's a whole other line of and ideally, when you're marketing, you want everybody to call tissue Kleenex, because hopefully you go to the grocery store and say, I need Kleenex, and they only offer you that. Like if I want a pop, I say I will take a Coke or a Pepsi. Mm-hmm. And a long time ago I worked at Coca-Cola, and they in the summer had people who went around and asked for Coke, and if they got Pepsi, then they would send a letter to that restaurant urging them to train their staff or to switch to Coca-Cola.
Is there anything like that in motorcycles? Like, because I know obviously people say, oh, it's the Cadillac of blank, which just means that it's like the top end, or it's the thing everybody wants, or it's the best quality. Is there a word that is synonymous with brand in motorcycling in your experience, where it's just synonymous and it doesn't actually describe the thing that you're going to want?
I don't think it's ever been that ubiquitous, but I would say that when I was growing up, Honda were kind of the gold standard in Japanese motorcycles. However, having said that, they were slightly ahead of the others, and they marketed more aggressively. You meet the nicest people on a Honda doesn't mean a Honda was a better motorcycle. It just means they had a very good creative, and that was California based.
Yeah, I would actually love to do a podcast on like the marketing strategy in the early days at some point if we can, because I
find it interesting. People know that have listened to the 2026 edition of this podcast, since we've kind of rebranded, relaunched, all the rest, that the business side of things I always find intriguing, and motorcycle business, motorcycle branding, communications, PR, those things. Maybe it's because I took political science when I was in university. I find it really intriguing around bikes because it's just such a different community, and you're trying to reach people in a different way. So for Honda to strike gold back in the day, tapping into not the motorcycle, which we know is good company, makes good stuff, but to tap into the social aspect of it as kind of the cause that you would want to buy one of these, because if you buy one and you see somebody else on one, then it almost opened the door to conversation, to be part of the community. That, if somebody gets on a Ducati and they're riding along, they might not have the same sense of community that Honda was creating just based on the way they were selling the motorcycles.
Well, in the ads, the guys were wearing chinos, light-colored trousers, and there was a point to that you're not going to be greasy. And speaking as somebody who spent some of the 70s riding a Ducati, dark colors were definitely your friend.
That is great. That is great. So yeah, today's podcast is brought to you by Dirty Yeti Lids. But if you would like to be a part of the Canadian Superbike podcast, then reach out to me. CSPMarsh@gmail.com is where you can find me if you're interested. I've had a couple of emails from people coming in, some brief interest, and people, dabbling with the idea of being a part of us. If you want to talk directly to people who are interested in motorcycles, that are in and around racing, if you're in the paddock, if you want to promote your product, if you're a leathers company, whatever it might be, get a hold of me, CSPMarsh@gmail.com, and I'll run it through my agent, who's on the other side of this Zoom. Everything I do goes through him. So
I'm kind of a secret agent, which, by the way, was probably my favorite movie of last year.
I definitely thought you were going to go down the Epstein line of thinking there on the Russian spy news that's come out this week, potentially. But anyways.
No, I'm more concerned about famous people's ex-wives making comments which are very, very hard to work around.
Okay, also, I was doing something for work this week, and I needed to grab an image of myself that I was too lazy to dive into my own computer to find. So I Googled my name because I knew that it would come up in the Google search. I don't know if this is an algorithm thing or like an Elon thing or a Google thing or people being creepy thing. When I type my name, the first thing that bounces back is Marshall Ferguson wife. I don't have one. So I don't think people are searching that. Is that just the algorithm being weird? Because if you search any athlete, like if you search Austin Matthews, the top results are probably like Austin Matthews net worth, Austin Matthews Leafs, and then it's like Austin Matthews wife or Austin Matthews girlfriend. Why does Google do that? Because you just made me think about that when you search people's names. It's crazy. Like it's the same for MotoGP riders too. If you search that, it comes up with people allegedly wanting to find out their entire personal life. I'm like, I don't know how many people are actually searching for that. Why is that being pushed as like a suggested Google search? It's very strange.
Well, I haven't put any thought into this at all. But there was a time not that long ago when, because of particularly soccer, football in Europe, wives and girlfriends, right? So I think there were a lot of searches just trying to figure out who are these crazy people who are always seem to be getting on fights on TV and some kind of desire to turn their life into a reality television show.
Yeah. Which
I don't think we ever had that here. There was a hockey wives show for a while, but we're more like the Real Housewives are now. And I'm not knowledgeable, but I do know people who watch that, and they say it's very addictive, right? It's a real down the rabbit hole kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just about to say, I blame Formula One for their Monaco coverage, for us all Googling wives and girlfriends and all that. Because half the damn coverage at Monaco was like, look at all the pretty people. It's like,
yes, and Carlos Seitz shaming us for being preoccupied with people's girlfriends. And of course, it's funny because he got the all-time ultimate shout out in a Brad Pitt movie as being mentioned as the most handsome guy, right? If I was Carlos Seitz, I'd have a little equity in my name that I could afford to make fun of the rest of us for wanting to know about his no doubt extremely attractive girlfriend.
I would love to know if that line was negotiated. Did they have multiple parties that were potentially involved in the, hey, can you introduce me to blank, which turned into the Carlos Sainz? Because I would imagine that would be something that a lot of Formula One drivers would take pride in based on the people they surround themselves with.
Yeah, but if you follow F1, I think that she said Seitz is what you'd expect, that. So I also wonder if it isn't the other way around, that at some point whoever was working on that part of the script just picked the person that a woman in a bar would most likely hope to meet. And of course, I find the whole thing hysterical. Meeting a Formula One driver in a bar on a race weekend, I think that was something that happened in the 60s. I don't think that happens anymore.
I'm still angry about
Unless it was a juice bar, maybe.
I'm still angry about the car randomly flipping at Parabolica in the F1 movie. That I laughed out loud in the movie theater.
It was stupid. Yeah.
I'm like, that's unnecessary. And I watched the movie in the theater with Noah, which is great parenting by me. But as I was
Well, considering somebody told you it was fine for kids and completely forgetting the language issue, I apologize.
That's okay. It's okay. He as we're driving home, he's like, Dad, why did you start laughing in the movie theater? I was like, Noah, you have any idea how many races I've watched at that track, Monza? And I'm like, the likelihood of somebody randomly from one shot going around the corner, losing it on four wheels, and then projectiling 500 feet into the air like a spaceship when they cut to that shot, I was like, you guys did a really, really good job with this Formula One movie of making sure that you had cameras going around Brad Pitt and being able to bring Formula One to life in a way that felt realistic. And then you ended the movie with somebody, it felt like they cut to a couple of Hot Wheels like getting thrown into a pond, and they were like, look, he crashed into the lake. And it was like, it did not look like the cinematography that matched the rest of the movie, which is why it bothered me.
No, it was unfortunate, particularly because I consider the first few minutes of that about as good as it can get, and they really sold me right off the top with the stuff from the 24 hour. And to circle back and maybe give this some continuity to just regular people who maybe haven't gone down this rabbit hole. In the UK now, it's a big deal that they expect, because Lewis Hamilton was a producer and the movie's nominated, that he will go with Brad Pitt to the Academy Awards, and they don't think any car racer has ever been to the Academy Awards.
Really?
And obviously, Hamilton has been to the I can remember, is it one of the art galleries in New York sponsors a
Met
big
Gala.
fashion thing? Yeah, and Met Gala. He's been there and been all dressed up for that. So I don't have any doubt that Lewis Hamilton will represent very, very well at the Academy Awards and probably meet his next girlfriend. But
Wow.
I'm excited to see him, I hope.
Yeah, I agree with it. It's an interesting concept, and it also speaks to the fact that Lewis was a star before anything to do with Drive to Survive, but the marketing prowess of what Liberty has done with Formula One, and now them being able to hopefully do something similar to MotoGP, it opens your eyes to what Formula One drivers have become on the global landscape and the discourse around motorsports. But I'll mention Lewis Hamilton as Tommy Hilfiger guy going to the Met Gala as a fashion thing. Yep, that's cool. But he's also a part owner of the Denver Broncos, so he is ingrained a little bit in American sporting culture. So for him to come over and be a part of Formula One movie and go to the Academy Awards and all that is good stuff. You say next girlfriend. I saw a report this week that he was dating Kim Kardashian. And then I saw another headline that said Kanye West has banned his children from watching Formula One races because Kim Kardashian is hanging out with Lewis Hamilton. At which point I laughed out loud again because somebody quote tweeted the Kanye news and said, cool, cool, cool. Now watch his pole from Monaco back in 2000, whatever. And it was like, yeah, none of this matters. Like he's unbelievable as a race car driver. It's going to be okay. It's fine. Anyways, I feel like we've really sold ourselves to potential sponsors here by going down the girlfriend, wife, Formula One rabbit hole on a motorcycle podcast, but that's fine.
And you were one Kardashian away from going to Timothy Chalamet, who hasn't played a racer yet, but has the build of a racer.
Should we be laying odds right now on the idea that Lewis is hanging out with Timothy at the Academy Awards? Maybe we'll see. It's the marketing stuff I find to be intriguing is how we went down this rabbit hole, obviously, and the way that the brands, some of them have taken hits, some of them have confirmed their prowess throughout the test of this past week in MotoGP. I find intriguing. Was the Yamaha stuff... first of all, I'm going to ask you to give a proper background on what happened with Yamaha so that anybody who was not raking their way through the news this week understands the basis of what we're having as a discussion here. But my question is, after you give the background of it, Colin, was the overreaction unwarranted? Because there were moments of the test I had seen reporting where it's like, well, it's either 40 degrees out there, and so nobody's running because it's too hot. They're not getting legitimate data. And then it was, well, here comes the rain showers in the afternoon, so nobody's really running on day 2 of the test because the conditions are right, except for Maverick Vinales, who Jorge Lorenzo was just basically forcing him onto the track because he was like, "You will beat me. You will do everything I say." And so, because Jorge Lorenzo has decided to be...
I'm sorry, when did Maverick Vinales do anything anyone said ever?
So apparently when he started paying Jorge Lorenzo a bunch of money, and Jorge Lorenzo decided that he was just going to recreate the trauma of his childhood on Maverick Vinales. That's exactly when that started happening, because that's how it works, I guess. But what happened with Yamaha this week?
Well, I suppose we need to start from the top. We've had 2 sets of tests. One was for the non-official riders, but the official testers that also included concession group. I think it's D, but it's only Yamaha, right? They have a lot more latitude with testing because we're trying to help them catch up. And then we had the official test when basically the whole grid went out, give or take the people who were hurt, which is only a couple at the moment, which is good. And unlike last year, nobody really good got hurt, but
note,
Quartararo a little bit.
Ralph Fernandez
but so where I'm headed
test.
here is what actually happened. Yamaha have a new V4. They're not planning to run the inline. I don't believe there were any inline 4-cylinder Yamahas there. They were all V4s. All 4 of the factory and satellite riders were on the V4s, so that's good. And allegedly they were running the engine to a higher spec, although I did a little checking and I don't think that ever actually happened. And they had some mechanical issues, and this was after Quartararo had his crash and he was okay to keep riding. And then it turned out he'd broken, I think he hurt his left leg and his right hand. Anyhow, but Quartararo is immersed in a political issue there, so any sort of straight information involving anything to do with Quartararo is going to be tough. What I heard initially was that they were getting some oil pressure issues, which are usually a symptom of something big coming, and they weren't getting the data when they expected it, so they were a little bit in the dark. And of course, there's a lot of telemetry on these bikes, and something like oil pressure is probably monitored in a couple of places on the bike and compared, because depending on where you measure it, the pressure will change. And then the answer that they came up with and kind of circulated later in the test, which seems like a cover-up, is they had an overheating battery. And while that could be a thing, just to be clear, there's no electronic harvesting or anything required in the rules. It's not F1. And that they pull the bike out for half of a day. And as you pointed out, it was probably the easiest half a day to pull out of because it was hot and they've got a new engine. But Yamaha have been consistently down on the trap speeds, and the riders are complaining the bikes aren't fast enough. The story is there's something in the pipeline, but it won't be there in time for the start of the season. And that was the story at Valencia last fall, that there's a new engine configuration. And to be clear, the other manufacturers aren't allowed to make big changes. Yamaha still are because of this concession group they're in. But things aren't good at Yamaha, and they have 2 sets of problems. They have to have the confidence of the other riders, the non-Quartararo riders, who would all like to hang on to their job, and also a couple of people who may or may not already be riding Yamahas next year, and they know it, but we don't. And I hate to be this way, but we got to cycle back and say nothing is confirmed. There's so many stories. Most of us believe them. To some degree, the riders are behaving like these deals are done. And of course, the one that we'd most like to hear about, which apparently was the trigger, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, is Acosta leaving KTM, which was certainly expected from my point of view. And where is he going? And the story is he's going to be Marc Marquez's teammate at Ducati. And that means Pecco is rattling around. And to be clear, Pecco had such a bad time last year. I don't know that the key people at Ducati, even he starts the season really well, and the indications were very positive during the test for Pecco. But I think that they've given up on him, or don't think he's the best choice anymore. And I think last year was that bad, and we all would like to forgive him, and some of us still rate him. But I think of Marquez not being the fastest, but being close. And, I talked about this earlier, that he is in the window of where he can tune the motorcycle. So between the quality of his ability to race, quality of his ability to qualify, and his just general confidence in his team to find a setup, he's close enough. He's not worried about it. Pecco, every session is a mystery because he's had times when he just doesn't know. And the worst part is he's got that look on his face that says, I don't know. And, you talk to the team guys, and I don't mean just Ducati, all of them. The riders' confidence is fragile, and most of them are nervous all the time, worried about how this session's going to go. So everybody around them is telling them all the time, everything's great. We fixed everything. There's no problems moving forward. Whatever was bothering you last time, we're pretty sure we fixed that. We looked at the telemetry. But this nonstop confidence boost of the rider by everybody on the team, and we're talking 30 or 40 people, right? When the team's been doing that and you haven't in several sessions lived up to your reputation, and Pecco's reputation is gigantic. At times he has been the fastest guy, mostly at times when Marc Marquez wasn't there. But one side of the garage is not worried about whether their guy is confident, and probably Marquez doesn't need that much talking up. But otherwise, you hear this a lot from the Aprilia teams, that one of the things they like about Bezzecchi is he isn't as fragile. That's the word I might take. But certainly Maverick Vinales is a guy who's famous for needing the undying support of everybody he talks to. So that's got to wear on Ducati. And Acosta's 21 years old. He hasn't won a Grand Prix, but confidence does not appear to be a struggle for him. I worry that he's going to get hurt because he's had some absolutely gigantic crashes, but one problem at a time. And hopefully KTM, the new bike, which he says feels completely different, which is what he wanted to hear. Hopefully that gives him a couple of wins. He gets into context. KTM become a player because it's been a while since they've won a race.
It's great stuff. I just quickly with Pedro, I would say that I don't necessarily fear him crashing, overriding the Ducati when he's on at 27. My fear is him overriding the KTM in 26 to prove the point that he's valid, that he's worthy of being rated in order to go to the factory Ducati team in 27. With Pecco, it feels like he's got to end up at Aprilia. Like I've seen videos of him and Bez at like Valentino's Tavulli Ranch or whatever, like ripping around doing all the different styles of racing that they have available. Like they're obviously buddies. They obviously respect each other. They obviously have a common goal in mind. And think about like Bez going into Aprilia and being the saving grace for all of the Jorge Martin mess, and Pecco basically coming out from the factory Ducati team after this season and feeling as though he's been slighted. Like the bike seems to match up with what Bagnaia would be comfortable with. Bez has got the motivation. He's got the contract. Pecco will be very happy to still be a factory rider and to go to somewhere that has the ties to Italy. And it feels like that team will basically be us against the world in 2027 of, oh, you doubt Bez? Oh, you doubt Pecco? We're going to put them together and we're going to have a hell of a package, and here we come. Watch this. Which I think is going to be
I mean, on a blank sheet of paper, if I have a choice between Martin, who at best is a problematic guy, and he's emotional, and he at times digs deep and does remarkable things, and there's only a few people who do that. But if I had the choice, particularly when I'm trying to develop a motorcycle, between Martin and Pecco, that's no choice at all. And having said that, I think what you led us to but didn't come out straight and say is for sure Pecco and Bezzecchi are having conversations about how does Aprilia work? What does the bike feel like? How does it activate the tire? What does the data look like? Right. So he is going to get such a good idea of what he's getting himself into, much, much better than you would normally ever get. And certainly much more than the team is going to tell you the bike is fantastic. It's just waiting for you to win on. And of course, that's going to be a benchmark with Martin this year, because if he can get back to where he was in his riding, we expect 2 or 3 wins there. And it's interesting, can Yamaha win a race? I don't know. I think Honda won a couple last year, some of them circumstantial. I think Honda's going to do a little bit better. So, is it going to be more for the others? Yeah, but the problem is Marc Marquez, right? And when we talk, we tend not to even go to Marc Marquez because it's a given that it's a dynasty. And, when you take into account that he missed a significant chunk of the season, he was the player, right? And the irony of it is, if he hadn't been, his brother would have been, right? So, Pecco, everybody thought would at least be close, and Pecco was fifth in the championship, partly because the tail end of his season, when going into the Marquez injury, most of us would have said, "Oh yeah, Pecco's just going to stack up 4 or 5 wins here," and he really, really struggled, and the wheels came off the wagon, and that's what Ducati's looking at. That's their recent memory of life with Bagnaia.
I have a quick Yamaha follow-up on this before we move forward, but first...
And I don't know if we really covered Quartararo completely. I kind of got off track there.
Well, I mean, what is there to cover with Quartararo? You can give people the Cole's notes in this podcast, and that basically describes it. Like, he wasn't overly happy, then he had a crash, and then they had the engine issue that was unrelated, and so he disappeared, and... seen. That was his test. Like, at this point, it basically confirmed he's not going to be back with Yamaha because he didn't have confidence, and he had said last year that basically by the first test, they better show up and blow me away if they have any chance of keeping me. I don't think this is how he was looking to be blown away. So,
I honestly, this is going to sound corny, feel a little sorry for Yamaha because, there's a lot of stuff coming out of Razgatlioglu's camp that he's really discouraged. And, his comments suggest he's exactly where you would have expected him to be, that there's some positives, there's some negatives, and he's saying it's going to take me 4 or 5 races. Now, the good news is, with so many people apparently ready to change or having already changed for next year, that he's in a position where he's got a 2-year contract. He can struggle early in the season. No one is going to make a big deal out of that. I mean, if he goes out and wins the first race and then struggles in the next 4, people will make a big deal of it. But otherwise, he's got some runway and he should enjoy it. He should take advantage of it. But basically, Pecco, we thought had a little bit of runway, and we think this whole Marquez and Acosta thing basically just completely took his chance to work his way in. And the irony of it is, the test seems to suggest that Bagnaia is going to be okay with the new bike. We'll see. Right. We'll be talking about that very soon, at the end of the month, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'll follow up on the Yamaha thing in a second, but I just want to mention a big dad win of this week, okay? Because I got my son, he's really into board games at this point, 5 years old, starting to figure out things like, we play Jumanji and it's fun, or, Scrabble and like the junior kids version. He likes it. It's nice to have a challenge. It's nice to play some games. He's in senior kindergarten. And
is he beating you yet?
He kicked my ass at the game of life. No joke. We counted the money at the end. Know what it was though? He got stuck in the loop where he was making a bunch of money, but he couldn't retire. And he ended up just raking in $20,000 worth of, he basically took, the bank was empty in the game of life. And at the end, I counted mine, and then I looked at his, because it was the first time we'd ever played it together. And his stack of cash, I said, Noah, I don't even have to count this. You kicked my butt. I was like, so that was the first time I experienced that, and he was all happy. He started showering money as we were ending the game and all the rest. But we bought this other game called Scout It Out, which is essentially, it's kind of like a country trivia game. So there's cards that have fun facts about countries, like 5 of them, and here's the capital, here's what the country is known for, here's its main export, and here's the flag of the country. And then the board game itself is kind of like a big...
Oh, it's not a country music game. Oh, okay.
No, yes. So it's kind of like a big global map is the actual game itself. And this is the big win and how it ties in. You mentioned Honda and some of their circumstantial victories from 2025. We were going through the cards, and he didn't really know any of them. And then he came to France, and he was like, France. And I went, whoa, why'd you know that? He's like, that's where Zarco won. I was like, what? So, if you thought that putting your kid in front of the television to watch international motorcycle racing of any form, World Superbike, MotoGP, otherwise, was just watching bikes, kids absorb stuff. So he's learning international geography because he actually asked me, Dad, where's the place where the waves are crashing in the background of the track? And I was like, I don't know if he was talking about
Phillip Island.
Yeah, I'm like, was it Phillip Island or was it Mandalika? I'm like, I don't know, because those shots are pretty great too that they use for the Dorna broadcast. But anyways, I thought that was a very nice moment.
Yeah, Mandalika, they have to cut it to get it. At Phillip Island, it's actually in the back of a shot. So the pickup, when Dorna want to believe you're reading whatever the signage is in turn 6, the average person is looking out to see if there's any penguins in those breakers.
That's so true. So true. So my follow-up...
And by the way, when you're at Phillip Island, one of the things to do for entertainment, I'm not making this up, is to go see the fairy penguins.
Oh, that's so cool. Which, by the way,
And unfortunately, what's disturbing about it is they have to come into shore every night, and the seals know and wait to eat them.
ooh, yep.
So if you go on the wrong day, it's carnage, right? It's not something you'd want to take a little kid to. And they kind of warn you like this, we don't know how this is going to look. And the funny part is all the penguins come close, you can see them, but it takes the first brave penguin to see what mood the seals are in. So if the first guy makes it, then everybody comes in. And but if the first guy gets eaten by a seal, then it gets unpleasant.
I did see that there is a Steven Spielberg directed, Morgan Freeman narrated nature documentary about, I think it's dinosaurs or something, that's coming out on Netflix on like March 6th. I saw an interview from Super Bowl Radio Road this week of Frank Caliendo, who does a tremendous Morgan Freeman impersonation, that he says in order to get into the window and the mindset of Morgan Freeman, you just have to go hold the microphone close to your mouth and go, ah, yes. And then from there, you just kind of make your way. And now I'm just imagining Morgan Freeman doing a nature documentary that he's hired by Liberty or Dorna going, at Phillip Island, there is only one way to truly anticipate the beauty and the majesty at the back end of the track.
See the fairy penguins.
As the fairy penguins make their way home and the seals devastate them one by one. So we're gonna hire Morgan Freeman, right? Liberty's gonna get on that and make sure that they've got the rights to all of the nature documentary at Phillip. But that was kind of cool that he recognized location and all of these kind of things. So that was fun. And he also just when he saw the turkey flag, he said Toprak. I was like, man, like just literally having the flag, whether it's next to your name on a graphic or having it on your suit or whatever it is, it's like that's pretty cool for kids to be able to almost like learn global things through racing, which I thought was very fun. So.
Also, when you have a full calendar, one of the hardest things is to have a race that stands out. And that French round that Zarco won was a very, very memorable set of events. Crazy, crazy race, which I believe is the one where Quadraro crashed on a warm-up lap that didn't even end up counting, right? And he was running back to the pits, and everybody was trying to have two bikes that ran. And I think part of the reason Zarco won was that he was in a situation where he hadn't used up too much of his stuff in races that weren't counting.
So many tire changes in that race that I remember sitting there watching it, at the midway point and trying to do the almost like the Formula One math of like who's actually leading at this point. You're great at this, Colin, because you've done this for so long. But there's times where we're watching Formula One together if we're at our producer Cam's house because we're voicing Bridgestone CSBK races, and you're like, well, Lando's actually in the lead, and I'm like, what? He's in fifth, right? What are you talking about? It's like, well, because you understand the windows and the length and the tire wear. I remember sitting there during Le Mans and going, I have absolutely no idea who, because it wasn't like one layer of like these people have pitted and these people haven't. It was who started on what's the window, how many people have they changed, have they been in twice, do they have a long lap?
And the long lap was what really made it hard because you never can tell. And Marquez fortunately went with his long lap almost right away, which gave us the delta to understand how bad it could be. But of course, no one's going to do better on the long lap than Marc Marquez, right? Because nobody is weighing their options better than Marc Marquez.
Well, also nobody practices ripping through the long lap like Marquez.
Oh, they do. Trust me. It's it when you're in the long lap corner and somebody decides to practice and you're set up to shoot or whatever, it really throws you like, oh my God, this guy's gonna die because he's in a different corner, right?
Okay, good to know. See, that's me talking.
And the Moto2 guys, for instance, practice long lap a lot because they get in trouble a lot.
Yeah, it's like going through 130R in a Formula One car at Suzuka, I guess, for the Moto2 bikes. They don't even have to lift off throttle. It feels like half the time they just chuck it in and lean and hammer it and make their way out. But the Yamaha question I'm trying to get to, which I've enjoyed dabbling around, but in the menu options of, hey guys, let's try to limit the damage on what happened here at the first test for MotoGP, why go with the battery thing? Because, like, what impact would the battery theoretically, with people who are educated about the situation that was on track with, whether it's with the oil temperature or pressure or, like, what influence would that have that they would look at all of the things and go, you know what, this one's not as embarrassing. Let's go with battery, and that'll explain it.
Well, I assume that they have a battery supplier. There's only 2 or 3 companies that make high-end batteries. So, I mean, as soon as I heard battery, I thought, well, who is there a battery sticker on a Yamaha MotoGP bike? There isn't. And a lot of people think brake pads, spark plugs, batteries are all the same. And you're not wrong to look at it that way, but that's not true. There always are slightly superior options, chains, things. I mean, there's a discussion last year, remember, about chains, right? Because they started coming off, which was more to do with ride height device than quality of the chain. And, I can tell you, most people even with super bikes don't worry much about chains anymore. The chains are really, really well made. But having said that, as soon as Yamaha said what they did about battery, I thought, whose toes did they step on in Japan? Who know that they're the supplier of the battery for that bike and don't appreciate being drawn into the battle.
Sorry, I just ran away because I was trying to hustle my way back in time to have my new bag of goodies from Hyperlight Moto, including let me go straight from RK. Got a new chain to throw on there. But yeah, it's intriguing that they decided to go with that, and in the thought process around the whole thing of trying to limit the damage, and the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I believe Japan was the one that basically said, hey, stop, park the bikes. Was that what you have read or understood? Because they were trying to understand the problem, and the communication from higher up was, hey, are you guys going to make us look really bad? Because we just had our guy sent home because of a crash, even though it was unrelated to the engine issues, and don't really love the PR that's coming out of the start of the season here for our big project.
I don't think it matters who made the decision, because it was embarrassing, and how they handled it arguably was embarrassing. And until the first race, which is a few weeks away, that will even at Phillip Island, it's going to be that's World Superbike. That's not where MotoGP starts. But when the season opens up, through the first few sessions, the debate's going to be, do Yamaha still have whatever that problem was? And the implication is always going to be that it was to some degree an imagined problem, right?
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
Now, having said that, if your battery truly was overheating, like you were overcharging it or something like that, if the battery explodes, that's a gigantic mess, right?
Yes.
So that's a safety concern. It's most of us think that for them to park the bikes, it's oil retention, as in it's going to cause a failure that's going to leak oil. And of course, the bikes have a fairing that retains oil, and they have lots of good telemetry. So to me, it's what you want to think is, okay, maybe that's a place where they might develop an oil leak. But the concern is, no, they're going to throw a connecting rod. They're going to punch a gigantic hole in the side of the engine, and that's their oil leak. That's your fear, that they're going to have a catastrophic failure. And if you're at the right place at the right time trackside with a video camera or a still camera, you'll see it and you'll hear it for sure, right? And a whole bunch of oil pumping out the side of an engine, which we saw at CSBK at the last round, right?
Yep.
We had a Yamaha that oiled the track, and that was a connecting rod that broke the cases.
Yeah, well said. The other thing that I find kind of intriguing, I guess, here on the way out about Yamaha stuff is that they are trying to set a baseline for development in order to truly understand the bike. And we've already talked about, did it matter to miss time? Did it not? Whatever. The reality is they are behind, right? They're trying to get up to speed. They're trying to feel confident in what they're doing. If I'm Jorge Martin, in the last podcast, we talked about the potential that he's going there. There's reports coming out that are fairly legitimate from people who are in the know that Martin is on his way there. And we also asked the question of, who's the rider who will look back a year from now and wonder why they're on this team, on this bike, in this situation that they've created for themselves? And if I'm Martin, and he's not participating in this first test because he's still dealing with the scaphoid stuff, which, by the way, I did watch on Rev TV this week, the Martin Heaven to Hell documentary.
That's good, huh?
Yeah, it was very, very good. But I was, again, watching it with my son. And, if you want to blame what I talked about earlier with the wives and girlfriends conversation, as soon as they were interviewing his girlfriend about the major crash that he had in Qatar, where he got clipped by Digia, they put her on camera, and my son looked at me and winked. And I was like, What are you doing? I was like, yeah, I get it. She's very pretty. That's fine. You're good. Relax, little 5-year-old. And so anyways, but if I'm Martin in his camp and I'm looking at what happened with Yamaha this weekend, that's not exactly inspiring confidence. And it makes me wonder whether or not he just refuses to not be a factory rider based on the market and the way that it's shifting with Acosta and Quartararo and all the rest.
Well, I'm telling my manager that, let's just circle back on KTM, right? Let's
Yeah.
if we're not locked in, and of course, they don't don't do letters of intent anymore because nobody ever honored any of those. So usually it means we're close. We have a couple of details to sort, and it sounds like at least 2 or 3 of the riders are in that position where they basically made the deal. However, having said that, if you haven't signed, because normally if you have to go to the European contract, whatever, you have to have a contract, right? You have to have signed something. And right now, everybody's denying that they've signed anything, including Quartararo, who now, because of how things went, we all think, well, that's the last nail in that coffin. And of course, the weird thing is, once all the stuff's sorted through from 2 weeks ago, it's Acosta, we believe, who provoked the whole thing, right? So really the question is, does Acosta have a signed Ducati contract? And Marquez seems to say no, because I haven't signed my Ducati contract. I have one. I'm basically set with my terms. But Marquez would absolutely be signing off on who his teammate is because of the strange situation going on at Ducati right now.
And Massimo Rivola did say this week as well that when they released the Marco Bezzecchi marrying his motorcycle video, that they got their priority done. Like, Marco was the priority, and I put something on our Instagram account that was essentially a story that MotoGP had posted of Rivola giving an interview where he said, it was a beautiful masterclass in hitting all of the talking points extremely succinctly. He said, we got our priority done, which is a way of essentially throwing shade at Jorge Martin, but also just saying, here's how much we love Marco Bezzecchi and everything he's done with the team. In that video, by the way, MotoGP included a shot of Marco Bezzecchi sitting on the ground in the pit with his team around him, sitting on the pit wall with like 7 of them, just like high-fiving and hanging out. And it was just a candid moment of them hanging out in the pit.
Yeah, I saw that. It was a really good image.
It was a great shot, because it's like, that is why they love that guy. But then he said, Jorge, we really haven't had a chance to discuss. We'll figure it out as we go forward. And, we're Aprilia. We never sleep, and we always have plan B, plan C. But maybe if the bike is good, then plan B becomes earlier. And to circle back to it, I was like, because plan B is Pecco. Like, it seems pretty clear that that's where they want to go through all of this. But all right, so
in Europe we thought Plan B was Aero, but we'll see.
So that is, anyways, long winding discussion on all things Yamaha. Next up, I just wanted to. I don't really have a question on this. I saw Peter Baum from the Oxley Baum MotoGP podcast putting out an image of how Gigi Dall'Igna's mind works. Which was an image of the new ride height device for Ducati. And when he put out the picture, he's like, here's the difference between 25 ride height device and 26 ride height device. Gigi Dall'Igna loves complicated things. And when I just looked at the picture, obviously I'm like, I don't have the mechanical sense to understand what I'm looking at. But I do know that when I zoom in on the difference between the two, I'm like, what in the hell is going on? How does a human being piece this together in the brain of, you know what, we can do this a better way, and then make that? It's just a pile of stuff that's sitting on like the front right in behind the windscreen and the fairing of the motorcycle. It looks like 40 different pieces of metal and plastic and tubing and all the rest. And my immediate thought was, God, that is beautiful. That look into Dall'Igna's mind and how this thing has been put together. Also, I am so glad they're getting rid of that, because that seems like such an unnecessary use of time,
remember
energy, and brain power.
Albert Einstein had some kind of comment about, God would believe in the simplest, most elegant solution. And given that ride height devices have cost some races for people, that looks so complicated, just to me, like, there must be a mechanical advantage. And one of the problems is, because the people I trust to give me information on some of this, some of them are from the CSBK paddock, and we don't have ride height devices. So these people have, at best, a passing interest in it, because it's not something that factors into their details. So trying to understand what you're looking at and how it's going to work. And don't forget, we have mass dampers, and we've seen a lot of that, the little tubes in the end of the swing arms and stuff like that, and how your mass damper works, how your front ride height, like, that's all connected. And the rear ride height also requires that the rider remember to activate it, which is not always the case. And then we have ground clearance issues, which is why the chains were coming off, because of the rear ride height device. And I think I sent you a picture of Pecco and from the last race last year, where the bike has, 1/8 of an inch of ground clearance coming onto the front straight. And you look at that and you go, man, if you go over a curb, I don't know what's going to hit the ground, but it looks like most of the back of the motorcycle.
Yeah, and Matt Oxley also posted this week from the test an image of the Honda being so it was almost disorienting to me looking at this picture because the bike is so low that it doesn't look real. And like I'll post an image of this on the video podcast if people want to see it. But like for you and I, Colin, like the image that I just pulled up on my phone, kind of hard to see there. But the thing is, it looks like it's two motorcycles. It looks like an AI image where you went, hey, like ChatGPT, can you grab essentially an image of a MotoGP bike, and the like AI doesn't really know how to put the image together, so it creates this really long drag bike. But that's what these things become when you start using these devices. And like the middle of the bike looks like it is bent in half and stretched because the fairing you can't tell. It also doesn't help with the Honda that they have like the low pipe exhaust coming out. It makes it look like it's just somebody has basically taken a paintbrush and like stroked through it to make it look longer. But these things are so prone to messing up the actual outcome of races, and so beautifully designed that they create the intended outcome when they work. But the complication of it all, and I understand that MotoGP is about prototype bikes and being able to push the boundaries of what's possible with all levels of aero and engineering and engine power and how do we maximize this or that. So it's great that they're able to push the boundaries on this. But if you were to say to me when I was a kid, like, hey, in 2026, that's what a motorcycle is going to look like, I'd be like, how? It doesn't make any sense.
The sooner we're done with all of this, the better. And as much as because of my age and growing up around racing cars and aero, that I find some of that exciting, it's not helping the racing. And the fact that, knocking off wings and fins and stuff also affects outcome. Um, and it's funny, we're on our last year of these rules and we still have people pushing the boundaries. I saw some fairings that were much bigger, wider, with more ducting internally, and I'm thinking to myself, we just need to move on from this because it's not helping the racing. And it's funny, Suzuki pulled out, and at the tail end of the season when they left, they won the two of the last races. And what's notable is how little aero was on those bikes and how they chose to go in a different route and in group situations around other motorcycles that seemed to help them, that they were harder to slipstream and stuff like that. And, when you look at those strange little wings that are sort of underneath the rider's thigh, apparently that is just to screw up the aero behind you to make it more turbulent. So the guy who's drafting you, his aero isn't working as well, right? That's one of the factors there. And I mean, you look at those wings, they're very, very small. That they do much is shocking to me because the environment they're in has not much airflow. I guess, the rider's legs are in front of them.
Uh, which anybody who has been on a highway in behind a transport truck with a front fairing that's grabbing a lot of wind coming off the back of an 18-wheeler, you know how not fun that can be. So the idea of doing that and disrupting somebody behind you is great, but it's essentially a Mario Kart principle of like, how do I mess up the guy behind me by shooting the red turtle shell or whatever, right? It's like, to me, that's just what comes to mind when I'm like, yeah, that's evil, and also it works, which makes sense why they would want to do that, because it is a cutthroat the aim of trying to compete at the highest level with people. So, yeah, intriguing to see how the aero stuff in the mind definitely has worked as of late of Delaney trying to push the boundaries, and the aero, as you say, like having those restrictions moving forward. And it, like you say, it was noticeable. There was a couple of different bikes throughout the test where you see the picture and you're like, whoa.
And to circle back on aero, which I wasn't necessarily planning to talk about,
yeah.
The discussion with Ducati, and they made a big deal that they've made some big strides in aero, and the new ride height device is a success, and they will be racing with that. And that's partly because Pecco struggled with the old one. But having said that, apparently Ducati tried 24 aero, 25 aero, and 20, the new package. And they were split, the riders, between 24 and 25. Nobody picked the new one. And of course, from Ducati's point of view, Piero is going to keep testing that new one because if they came up with a new package, they think that's the way to go. And just to be clear, this is important because when you get to the first race, you have to pick one, and then you've got one more change to make. You can't keep switching fairings and scoops and ducts and fins. And this also takes us to a little bit of information that you discovered, and I appreciate this, was that I had pointed out earlier that Razgatlioglu wasn't running all the aero on the back of the Yamaha, and that's because of the way they've got the bike set up. Because he's so tall that the parameters for clearances and where you're allowed to run stuff with his bike with the aero he likes, it's actually beyond the rules of what's allowed in what position on the motorcycle. So he can't run the Stegosaurus or actually they have more of a monkey perch wing on the back that they like to run. And right now he can't do that. Now the story is they're going to ask the FIM, we got this tall guy, give us some help, right?
Yeah.
But right now he hasn't been running the full aero package. Now, I don't think that's the reason that he's struggling, but it's just another challenge that Yamaha have to figure out.
Yeah.
And again, let's remember he's sticking around, right? He's not Quartararo. He will be a Yamaha rider almost for sure next year.
Yeah, they are being very open about it, that it is a challenge to work with him. I'm just going through Simon Patterson's Twitter feed here, just trying to see, I guess it's too far down back in the early days of testing, but the thing that I found and I sent to you, so here it was. So he essentially said, Yamaha done for the day at least. We'll make a call on the final day of testing tomorrow morning. So that was after they shut things down. And then somebody said, I bet Toprak's delighted with this start to his Yamaha career with so many gremlins before a wheel has been turned in anger at a race. How do you envision him getting around the issue for him? And he said, it's testing. It's supposed to be used for testing. And considering 2026 is a learning year for both him and them, I doubt he's stressed at all. But his height is inevitably an issue that is going to continue. So they have to find some solutions, whether it's with this year's bike or by tweaking it going into next season. So, just another, I guess, kind of challenge that Yamaha has to make their way through going into.
But as much as Patterson's plugged in and he definitely knows what he's talking about. In this case, for whatever reason, Razgatlioglu at the end of the test was quite outspoken about how discouraged he was. Mm-hmm. And I almost wonder if that's because Quartararo is getting so much attention and, he has everyone's attention right now. 3 or 4 races from now, if he's qualifying 18th all the time, he may not be getting much attention at all. Because don't forget, there's quite a number of European riders that we hardly ever talk about. They went out, they rode well, they had good sessions, got good data. Honda overall had a good test, but it wasn't anything kind of miraculous as a talking point. So we tend to gravitate towards these people who've established their credentials as being the center of attention.
Yeah. So true, so true. All right, is there anything else that jumped out to you? I mean, we haven't talked the brothers Marquez all that much. I mean, Alex, the rumors of going to factory KTM, if Pedro is indeed jumping up to the factory Ducati team, and Mark being Mark, although I had seen a lot of people say that his general vibe at this test was of a man who understands that he might be 1 or 2 major injuries away from having to call it quits based on the wear and tear and everything he's been through in the past year, again, trying to rehab and not riding the bike for an extended period of time. But I kind of joked with you in our group chat that I would love to be able to hold on to a motorcycle while sliding like Marquez does so casually, because you shake your head no here on the video, Colin, and it's like his ability to essentially push the boundary in testing, and he said he knew that they had messed up something with the setup and that he was going to end up crashing, but that was the best place to crash if he was going to do it. And the casual nature with which he goes into a corner, knows he's probably going to crash, crashes, and then hangs onto the bike, slides, and then picks it up and goes, okay, I crashed. Well, at least I now know the boundary of this setup. Let's take it back and figure it out from there. And because he's Marc Marquez, it's a headline, because Marc Marquez crashes in turn 1, and then you see the CCTV footage, and it's not exactly like watching Jonathan Ray's massive crash from CCTV footage of last year, where it's like, oh, he's destroyed a part of his body, and that's not going to work. It's just Mark.
Well, on top of that, when they had it's not a spectator, it's a cell phone video of some kind that was not the closed circuit TV of him getting a push in from a guy on a little scooter. And the bike has no damage because, of course, he was underneath it the whole time. And normally in Canada, we'd say, let go of the bike, don't get stuck under it. But because the tracks are so smooth and the runoff is well looked after, he knows that he can make life a lot easier for his guys if he stays under that bike and holds it up. Now, that doesn't always work, but it worked in that case. And that all you have to do is change the body work, and mechanically the bike's all okay. Like, it didn't tumble, it didn't roll, it didn't flip. So there's not much of a challenge there. And I thought it was kind of comedic that Dorna posted the closed circuit image and then the up close and personal here's the bike going by on its way to the pits being pushed by a little Yamaha 50 or something.
Yeah, the kick from the marshal that's following him back to try and make sure that he gets back there in one piece. But yeah, I mean, and Alex, obviously this is a track that he likes that they were testing at, so it's not shocking that he was extremely fast and consistent. But I would also say that when you mentioned the aero for Ducati of, they were split on 24 and 25, but nobody picked 26, I would bet my life savings that Mark was picking everything he possibly could that was 25. No? Like, hey, I won with all of this stuff. Pecco struggled. Alex was on a 24, and I was still able to beat him on a 25 spec. So the split had to have been Mark wishing for anything that disadvantaged anybody else because he can ride around it and they can't.
I just don't. I think as much as it's easy to believe he is that Machiavellian, I don't think he actually is, because things are going well enough, and his last year was good enough that he is still in his own little time zone, and we'll see if he still is. Maybe he isn't anymore. But and then don't forget too, when we're talking about aero, each rider picks. You don't have to have your teammates aero. It's not like this whole chassis versus engine cases thing that Ducati got into last year, and you hear them still talking about a bike that's part 24 and part 25. That bike is Pecco's bike, right? That's probably more to do with the front end and some of the changes they made trying to get Pecco the feel he was looking for. So when that's not one engine in a different chassis, because we're pretty sure that that's not something that the organizers will allow, that the engine cases have to fit in the chassis they were meant for. So that was, I think if Pecco could have gone back last year just to the 24, he would have, but for whatever reason, and I'm not sure that wasn't just politics, they kept trying to fix the current bike rather than offer him. And don't forget, they're running year-old bikes. Most of the riders on Ducatis are on year-old bikes.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so 2 weeks away, Burger Ram test, and then thick and fast it starts happening here as we head towards round number 1. But I do want to give a shout out here as well to Torin Collins, because I posted on our social media, Instagram at Canadian Superbike Podcast last week, saying, hey, if anybody has any questions that I can throw at Colin, let me know in the middle of the podcast here. And Torin said top 5 rider projections in terms of how 2026 in Bridgestone CSBK ends up, and I immediately responded to him. I'm like, way too soon. I'm like, what? We haven't even hit round 1 of World Superbike going to Phillip Island and MotoGP getting through their testing, all the rest. I'm like, we will do that. That will be part of the podcast. But yeah, Torin was wishing for the details. He wanted to find out what was going on. So shout out to him as he gets set for Daytona. And we might as well.
Well, I mean, what I would like to guess is, and I'm not going to be in a position until Thursday at the start of March. But, Torin Collins on a Yamaha, he's never ridden the Daytona 200, but it's a race with pit stops. It's much more complicated. And a cynic would say his riding style is maybe not so well suited to a race where, to some degree, you have to take it easy on equipment and tires. But having said that, there's, I just said it out loud. So there's Collins' challenge to prove, as he did all last year, that these new things that he hasn't done before, he can handle in stride. And, he went to tracks he hadn't been and dealt with problems he wasn't used to. And, again, if Sebastian Tremblay can do it, well, then in theory, Torin Collins can do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say we have officially confirmed that Colin and I will be going down and being part of Bike Week and Daytona 200 coverage, and so you will get the Canadian Superbike podcast from Daytona heading in early March to be down there and be around it all and get lots of interviews and talk to plenty of people about whatever the news is and the events. And we're also going to a BMW 50th anniversary dinner that Colin, that you were nice enough to set that up. So yeah, plenty of stuff coming out once we're down there. What are you looking forward to most about, I guess, this iteration of Daytona 200, just as a little preview here to a month away when we start heading down?
Well, just the way it's played out a year ago, the Yamaha's triple street bike was coming into play and in focus, and had just had success in Australia.
Getting emotional
at the world opener.
The R9.
Yeah, and so now we're going to see the R9 in the Daytona 200, and they've had a year to get ready. I don't think there's any durability issues, but there'll be quite a number of them there. And Daytona has been pretty interesting, particularly because the rules seem to really suit that GSXR 750 package, but it hasn't won, right? So, right now, Ducati is definitely the story at that race. If there's a Ducati that can win, it looks like there's 2 or 3 that should be able to. So we'll see. It's I'm excited about the race. That it's now an official round in the Moto America series is good, because all the top guys like Torin and his team will be there. However, it also takes away the open tire rule, which means a lot of people who had support because they didn't have to buy tires, they had free tires. That structure's gone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to feel like a little bit of a different event, I would think, because of those aspects of it. But seeing the R9 in person is going to be great. The fact that Torin's going to be on an R9, I think, will be beneficial to his, at the very least, interest level from people. Maybe he can turn some heads being down there and ripping some fast laps. And I'm just excited to be down there. It's going to be a ton of fun, and we're going to have a lot of great content coming out while we're in Daytona for Bike Week. So, again, if you'd like to support the podcast, we're looking for people to support us so that we can get down there, cover gas, food, all the things that allow us to go down and actually create the content on the ground, because without having any support, we're just paying out of our pocket. And so we'd like to be able to give people some love if they're willing to help us out and have your name and your brand and whatever it is attached to everything that we are doing once we are in Daytona. And of course, we'd love to continue that if we find a great sponsor and a great partner into the season of racing, whether it be here in Canada or talking about things that are happening around the globe. So looking forward to seeing Colin again in the very near future. We will have another podcast for you coming out next week. We've got some great plans in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be at the Toronto Motorcycle Show on February 21st, recording content. So if you're listening to this and you're a rider, you're somebody that's in and around the area and you want to make your way down to the Toronto Motorcycle Show, we're just going to be gathering stuff, having fun with people, good conversations. Looking forward to that day. We're also lining up a couple of interviews from people that are Bridgestone CSBK and even regional racers in different parts of this beautiful nation. By the way, the Olympics are beginning today, so go Canada. And getting them to break down some of their thoughts on whether it be MotoGP, World Superbike, the state of racing, anything that kind of comes up that's of interest. So looking forward to doing all of that. But for now, thank you for listening. As always, appreciate everybody subscribing, following along on social media. On Instagram, it's where you can find us. Of course, it is at Canadian Superbike Podcast, and you can reach out to me, cspmarsh@gmail.com. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, I hope you don't have too many concerns, because we're just here to have fun. Thanks for listening, everybody.